Is setting up, and I keep moving the mics. That's driving the AV guys crazy in the back. But so, you know, there's really lovely dynamics on the OISF team. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Peter Manev now for 10 years and a bit more. And I have to there's so many Peter stories. I will not go into all of them. There's lots of Peter stories we also don't share across the team anymore. But not only is Peter brilliant in everything that he does for OISF and SuriCata, but he is one of the co-founders of Stamos Networks. He's now a published author. So if you haven't gotten the book that was sitting out the Stamos Networks booth, please go and ask for a book sign. Are you all out? Oh, sugar, really? All right, sorry, no more books left. So if you were lucky enough to get one, make sure that you have Peter and Eric sign it for you. But I will say that Peter has the best laugh on our entire team, that I can hear him laughing like a room away, and it makes me smile every single time. But he's brilliant and wonderful, and delighted I get to introduce him.
Thank you. You folks hear me all right? All right, perfect. About that laugh, though, that's what Jason said yesterday. He could hear me from his room. Yeah. So, folks, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Much appreciated. I will talk a little bit about recently discovered CVEs and metadata that could be, or rules that could be used for detection, stuff that we found on the field. And I hope it's interesting. A word about me. My name is Peter Manev. I'm part of the SuriCata team. I've been involved for the past decade, as Kelly mentioned, in a lot of QA and training stuff. With OISF and SuriCata, also co-founded with Eric Stamos Networks. I'm a big fan, naturally, as you might suspect, of open source, one of the self-maintainers, and I love threat hunting too. So, a little bit of a talk agenda. When I showed initially the slides to Eric, he said that's a day workshop. I said, what are you talking about? And what I want to do is give a sample overview of detection from recent CVEs with SuriCata, or the way we've done it, like Log4j, Fellina, the printing nightmare. Also look at the red team tool called SharpHound. You may have heard about it, probably. And share some tips and tricks from SuriCata and from our hunts. Rules detection, a couple of suggestions that will actually naturally evolve into discussion more tomorrow on the roadmap discussion, I mean, and a small announcement. Now, usually when I need to describe SuriCata in a person that does not know about SuriCata, I usually successfully use that picture, right? Because SuriCata generates all sorts of protocol, file transaction, it can do file extraction, pick up recordings around that alert, with or without the alert. However, when I'm threat hunting most of the time, I find it very useful to go lights off. Not because the rules or the alerts are not useful, but because it gives me a different perspective, right? So I switch off the alerts, I have a pickup, let's say, or we have a live system, and it keeps me looking without a direction, actually. So I need to come up with some sort of direction myself. So I get to learn a lot of stuff, and I constantly do so, and then I also, that makes me more reasonable when I start complaining, right? It gives me, makes me more knowledgeable about things. So some of the CVEs that we're going to touch here in this talk. A lot of, usually the CVEs can be used for a couple of things. Either a way to get in or a way to move laterally, right? Or both, let's say. So a couple of, at least cases that I have researched. So Fellina and Log4j, a way to get in, and printing nightmare, zero logon, and Windows server tampering vulnerability as well, kind of to move laterally. And yeah, just for those of you who follow Patch Tuesday, right? Microsoft released a bunch of stuff this Tuesday as well. So things do happen. So when a CVE like hits or is disclosed, there is a couple of things that usually the SOC needs to answer, right? So they need to answer, has this happened in the past? And usually you go by protocol logs, right? So in the case of CVs in SMB DCRPC environment and Microsoft environments, you go by, in SuriCata, it's called event type SMB Flow, file info, similar things. And you usually want to set up some sort of an alerting if this happens from now on in the future. You want to have let's say, a rule. Or you can set up this from your CM, let's say, Splunk, Elastic, and similar things. So those are the two immediate questions that come to mind. So we can have basically two types of hunt, right? So we have a network-based, network protocol-based hunt, and one on rules and alerts with metadata. And that's one of the reasons why I say sometimes it's useful for me to learn a little bit more and to give me more ideas if I switch off the alerts and just look at that pickup from a different perspective and then switch the alerts back on and do it again. You do learn a lot of things. So let's look at a couple of examples. I say a couple, but they're more than two. A way to get in. A lot has been said about Log4j. I'm not going to rediscover the wheel here. Most of you have heard about it. Most of you haven't slept over it that weekend and similar. So basically, it's still widely scanned for. We have live systems that we're monitoring, and including schools, universities, and scanners are just out there all the time, no matter what. So they're still trying. So what is actually the problem of detecting it on the network? Well, the problem with Log4j initially is like, you have a full article on the Stamos blog written by Eric, but the problem usually is you have a scanner and then you have a server that usually, if there is a breach, the target connects to that RAC server. And actually, you can have millions of scans a day, and we need to know if contact has been made with the RAC servers, right? So a scanner is one thing, but usually if an exploit happens, you need to check that if a connection has happened to the RSC server. So the problem with that is that this RSC server string that the breach client connects to can appear anywhere, but literally anywhere. So that's a challenge. So you have alerts and scans and attempts and similar things versus did it really happen? So how can you say actually did it really happen, at least from the network perspective? Well, for that purpose, actually Eric in his article used a little known rule keyword called flowvar. We did that actually, Eric did a quite extensive article about that. So basically it allows for creating metadata out of these matches. But how does it really help? So let's have a quick look. So instead of actually looking at thousands of alerts and similar scans and be like, who's scanning me? That's good. So let's not forget that when a CV comes out like that, you usually need to know everything about it as much as you can, let's say, and then figure out what's possible to do and how. So you have the scanning. That's good to know who's scanning, why, where is it coming from, and what you can do. But then out of these thousands of scans, let's say, the problematic is to check if the RSC service has been contacted. And this is where this flow keyword helps out. So instead of chasing the scan alerts, you can just check a minimal number of flow events in SuriCata if a flow has been established to that. As I mentioned, full article by Eric with a free rule set done, and you can see all the details in there. But basically it boils down to this. So these are all, let's say, the Log4j alerts, right? Or the scan attempts, rather. So it's a possible Apache attempt and so on and so forth. So you're either stuck with investigating these or trying to block off all these IPs where it's coming off in the wild. Or you can actually use the flowvar keyword and it will give you something like that. So instead of actually going the source IP, which in this case is the scanner, you extract the RCE server string and you go after that. Because if there is a breach, that's the way to connect to, right? So we come down from, like in this case, 848 scan our worst cases to actually 3. We need to check out 3 RC servers if we have flows towards those 3 guys. So much less work to do in terms of figuring out if a breach has occurred. And this is, as you can imagine, from Kibana, a simple aggregation done. Now, let's talk a little bit about, as I mentioned before, a red team tool called SharpHound. It's part of the Bloodhound, let's say, suite, and it's actually a collector for Bloodhound. It is available on GitHub, and the GitHub page looks something like that. So you have an executable you can download as a PowerShell and similar things, and yeah, it's really available. It is widely used by threat actors as well as red teams, including in purple team exercises and similar things. So both sides of the fence, really. And this is here a screenshot from an article, Trend Micro, about Black Basta. And as you can see here, we have a SharpHound executed to collect Active Directory information. Because it's actually the best thing to do is figure out, once they're in, figure out where they are and what's the least path of resistance. And how we can find that? Well, I tried it and I said to myself, well, let's try it out and see what they see. So I set up a regular default Windows 10 and Windows 2022 server Active Directory. And I went in there and just downloaded the SharpHound. So this was default Windows Defender settings and all that stuff. So the first down didn't go in, as you can see on the screenshot here. So that was the executable. It did not allow me to download, but the PowerShell just went through, no problem. Even though the PowerShell looked like that, function, invoke, Bloodhound, and similar things and all that stuff. So that was a learning curve for me, right? So the purpose is actually to enumerate and collect Active Directory information in Windows environment. So it gives you basically, and there's a very nice article of how also SharpHound was used. It gives you basically at least parts of resistance to get to some sort of privilege level, right, inside the Active Directory. Very useful, actually. You can use it for attack, you can use it for defense, you can use it for audit. There's many applications. It's a very good article. I strongly suggest you read it on the bottom of the screenshot right in there. So anyway, it paints out all the objects in the Active Directory, least path of resistance to get there. Pretty cool. I also learned a few things about Active Directory too that I've forgotten as part of my previous life Microsoft certification. And so I did that. I got the pickup and I said, let me have a look what's in there to try to figure something out. And so naturally, we look at event type SMB, protocol logs of Suricata. And these, believe it or not, are much more verbose than alerts. So, just as an example, an installation with like 5,000 endpoints, let's say, on a network, is perfectly capable of generating about 1 billion SMB logs, just SMB logs. So in general, Suricata alerts are like between 1 and 8% of the total volume generated. A lot more is generated by these other protocol logs. In this case, we're looking at SMB, right? So, simple Kibana query. I said I want to sort out a group by SMB file name because that gives also pipe handles and similar. And I want to start with negating some noise, which is, the policy. In this case, it was like / policy. That was the regular files served by default by Windows inside the Active Directory. So I negated those, and then I actually went in, and what I did in Kibana, and you can do the same query here. So basically, I aggregated on unique count of SMB file names or pipes by flow ID, right? So on the left-hand side here, I have flow IDs with a unique count of the SMB.filename keyword. And that gave actually interesting results right away. And what it pointed out directly was to that the collection of the SharpHound flow. So that was really interesting. So I look at it a little bit closer, and here I have the flow IDs, which is the Suricata native way of correlating events in the same flow, and unique count of file names. So all those flows were actually on top. Actually highlighted the SharpHound. And what I did then is like, so on the left-hand side here, I have the SMB transactions per flow. And then I did similar visualizations based on UUID and option number. So what would that be? So you have the same flow that has 53 SMB transactions, right? And then that same flow has 2 unique occurrences of the so-called UUID and option number. So what is a UUID and option number? Well, basically, right from the Microsoft Docs is a universally unique identifier that basically is used in cross-process communication and client-server interfaces and similar things. So in a Microsoft environment, it basically tells you what the service is, and the option number tells you what function is used from that service. So you can learn interesting things about that. You know, creating services, creating scheduled tasks, similar things. It paints a full picture, actually, very revealing. So that's what it was. So I created that visualization, and in this case, we have that's the SMB flow with the combinations of universally unique IDs and the SMB option numbers. So that picture here, actually, that query in Kibana, at least, that gives the sharp count collection routine. Tested a few times, it came the same way all the time. Now, the 3, let's say, pipes, what were in there, they were like the security account manager remote protocol, the server service remote protocol, and the workstation service remote protocol, because it's querying for data, so it has to be verbose, right? There's no other way. It needs to, even if they try to stay low, it still shows some visibility, and it's all in the same event type SMB flow of SuriCata. You have multiple transactions, but in the same flow. Something to be checked out if it's not coming from the regular admin infrastructure or management infrastructure, rather. So. To be vigilant about, especially the combination of those 3. Now, Fellina, anybody? That was this year, and basically a Windows support diagnostic tool remote called execution vulnerability, or another way to get in. There is a very interesting report and a walkthrough on dfirreport.com. I highly recommend it to read. Those folks are really awesome in being able to paint a picture of what happened when. Really good. We review pickups from there, learn a lot. So here is day 1 of how it started, and the link here basically shows you, you can have a lot more information in there, so that's a screenshot from there. Day 1, it starts with the Fellina exploit, right? Then the threat actor can decide to move immediately, more or laterally, or can decide to stay low for days and similar things. It really depends, I guess, on their target or mood. So we have actually the exploit happening here, and then what it translates into is, like, of course, once they get in, they need to understand what it can do and move laterally, right? So in this case, again, that's a screenshot from the article. In this case, they actually, the actor is doing remote file creation and execution on multiple hosts with SVR32exe. So basically, and you can see the DLL names are kind of very interesting. Then it moves on to Cobalt Strike, and it gets to pop out the domain controller, right? So basically, that was the one of the lateral movement. They also did RDP. So I was reviewing that too, and I said, well, let me have a look and see what I see, what I can learn from it, right? So naturally, if it's after the CVEs exploited, after the exploit rather, they start moving laterally. So first thing I got was, I was thinking of, like, let's look at the SMB and the file transaction logs produced by SuriCata, right? So let's see what we can say by reviewing a subset of that. What can SuriCata actually tell us? Ideally, that will be in one single log. We'll be able to say to tell everything, actually. That will be actually ideal, so we don't have to query multiples. So I'm having a look here, and on my screen you can see basically an event type file info. So this is a file transaction, and what it comes down to is it also has the flow ID. As I mentioned before, this is actually SuriCata's own internal way of correlating events, different events from the same flow. So this, I was actually curious what else this file info log had, And it has a SMB part, and as I was looking at that SMB part, we have a write command with a success status. We also have a file name being written that looks kind of funny, right? So not something you can type in easily like that. So that was interesting. You know, based on the previous screenshot, I was looking exactly for that. So I was like, okay, we can see that. Then I look at the actual file transaction itself, and sure enough, we have its executable, we have the shell, the checksum, and we have the size of it. So this whole thing is actually in one log, right? So there it is. That's actually very useful because basically if I can, you know, make a query for things like that or similar things like that, I'll be able to search it out. Of course, we have the challenge of file name not being the same or the shell not being the same, but at least we have a path, right? And that path could look something like this, right? So this is a Kibana query, but it could also be Splunk. So from the SMB logs, you know, we negate a little bit the noise, not from policies. What worked for me anyway. And we have a write command with a status success, and it does write an executable file, right? Okay, so that's very good. It could create a return of a lot of events. So what we need to check then is like, okay, where those events are coming from, where they're going. If it's like from the admin part of the network, the IT administration part of the network, or is it just the an end user to an end user, which would be actually interesting to have a look. So all this SMB protocol data, rather based in, it's actually part of the event type file info log as I was reviewing this specific sample, right? Moving on, I'm going to take you for a ride. I said that earlier, apologies, but printing nightmare. So you said, we were saying, pardon me, we were saying that, you know, that happened last year. It's still actually kind of relevant because on Tuesday, Microsoft, there was some also printer CVEs released, and why is it a nightmare? I don't know. Maybe there was a few months without a patch or a fix, right? So you had, the only thing you can do is like watch it or lock down or similar things. So it was not very, it was not convenient time because it also hit the exact summer vacations and all that. I canceled a few plans. But so we look at it and we look at, let's say, an example. And what do we have? We have basically an event type SMB, right? So that's SuriCata SMB log. Then we also have, actually if I zoom out a little bit, we have IOCTL command. Basically that command is, this is from Microsoft Docs, so that command is actually used to change the configuration and alter behavior of the target, right? So we have a success there, status success. So we know something was changed. We also have an option number, which is 89 in this case, and we also have a UUID. So this is always in one log in the current SuriCata Git master, or it will be there in SuriCata 7. The way this happened, I think it was with, the way it started happening, I think it was like we were doing a training with Eric at Troopers in Germany, and I was showing him the discovery, and I said to him, it would be really nice if you can just be in one log, you know, instead of trying to query different logs. So he said, give me 10 minutes. And he actually did the pull request, and that got accepted. And so very convenient way of doing that. So again, the UUID, and you have the link from Microsoft. And the combination of UUID and option number tells you exactly what's happening. In this case, it's a printed driver installation, right? Option 89 with that specific UUID. So quite telling, you know. In the case of SMB alerts. So this is what a Kibana query would look like, how to detect it, and we did that in the training class, by the way. So I hope it's useful for you folks. But this is a Kibana query, so we're querying this specific UUID with the DCRPC option number, so we know exactly what happens. The printed driver was changed, installed. And you can see a screenshot of the query below. So that's a query, so if it has happened in the past, right? So, or if it will happen in the future, we also see the logs. But you can also write an alert, or signature, pardon me, rule. And this signature rule will look something like this. So basically, we're saying, check the UUID, needs to be that, and the option number in there. And that will actually alert on a printed driver change. With respect to the printing nightmare. So that's a useful thing to watch out and be able to tell, right? So you have both things, the query of the data and the actual alert. Now, Some very minimalistic way of suggesting and saying a couple of things. So for alerting, some improvements that could help at least. I know we're going to have discussions more on that on Friday, tomorrow, let's say. But it would be nice if there's actually a file name keyword. I think there is a PR for that. That will actually help on alerting of such a sequence, let's say. And this is actually from SharpCount. So this will be useful, much on services, pipes, and similar things. So for example, Summer, as it is here on the screenshot. What else? Let's see. SharpCount routines also could be actually detected with flow bit rules, right? Or CM queries, like in Kibana and similar things, like I showed on the screenshot before. But these things actually do require a lot of like you have to write multiple rules, you have to really dive a little bit into rule writing, and you have to make sure that the sequence is correct, so one comes after the other, after the third. So it's not always optimal, right? You can still do it, but it's not always optimal, and you need 3 rules to match on a similar flow, let's say, on a similar transaction inside the same flow, or similar number of transactions, rather. So, it would be nice to be able to write like a single signature, for example, for multiple, to check multiple things in the same flow during multiple transactions. So order independent and order dependent, both ways actually. So I was thinking maybe something a little bit like that. I'm not saying this has to be like that, but it was kind of what I could come out with as I was writing the slides. And I was like, it would be nice to be able to say that in the same SMB flow, you can actually detect this UUID and the other, and actually the services or the pipes being used. In this case, that would actually be good to highlight cases like SharpCount and collection and similar things. I don't know if that suggestion would make it, but we discuss more tomorrow, I guess, on the roadmap discussion and similar. So open to criticism, feedback, and any suggestions actually welcome. That's why we're here, right? Now, a small announcement with a big impact, I hope. Stamos Networks is actually releasing a SuriCata lateral detection rule set. It's free and public, GPL version 3. This is based on our experience of chasing red teams at NATO live fiber exercises like cross swords, lock shields with Marcus and Eric, of course, hunting APTs and late T nights. There was a lot of these before we rolled that. So feedback is greatly appreciated. I'll show you how to download it in a second. But one of the things that we did actually during these exercises, it was, I think the latest one was in April. And basically, yeah, okay, so it's NATO, so it's military, it's a live fire cyber exercise. And I think somebody mentioned that's like, if the red team makes a move inside the network, I want to know about it. If they sneeze, I want to know about it. So that was the initiation of this whole actually lateral detection rule set, among other teams, of course. We were not the only team, we were on the part of the network, but there was also, you know, endpoint, elastic, everything was in there. Firewalls, proxies, all the things. So very, very good exercise, lots to learn. So, yeah. So what's in it, right? I said it's released, I'm still teasing, right? You cannot download it. So let me build up to it. So what's in it? Well, things like around 500 rules, highlighting basically SMB DCRPC network activities in the Windows environment, right? And requires SuriCata 606 and above. So if you have the latest table, you can actually run it. Which is not something I normally do, right? So I usually never run stable. I always run the latest dev or development edition. So sometimes when people ask me, what feature is great from stable, I am always dumbfounded. I'm like, I don't know. I use the latest dev actually all the time, but that's just me. So not that I recommend it, but for me it's like, yes, of course, these are great features. But I look at other things as well. But the good news is, yes, you can have 606 or and above, and the latest SuriCata stable will work with it. So you can have things like this. So here's one example. Basically, in this case here, we are detecting open classes root, right? So again, you have each root has its own link that gives you exactly where this information was taken out. And again, there's about 500 rules of this. I don't remember the exact number. But you can see alert SMB, and this is actually open classes root. What this means is, somebody's opening the registry remotely on that machine to do something. So if that is not really expected, you might want to check out where that is coming from. And again, there is the rule has a flow bit as well. Each of those functions, each of those services actually have their own flow bit, so you can actually search, also query by that inside the Kibana, Splunk, Chronicle, whatever CMs you use. And you have the link in there, and that link actually will bring you to the Windows protocol documentation of Microsoft specifically for that. And you can read a lot more details about it if you wish. Okay. As you can actually notice by the date, this was done in 23rd of March, right? And 608 was not released back then, so that's where we're actually prepping actively for the exercises and to hinder as much as we could possibly the red team movement inside the network if they had the breach. Because like to move laterally, you need to have a breach, right? You have to establish a beachhead, then move laterally. Another example, yes, open classes root. I think explain about that. Another example, in this case, we are adding a scheduled task, or one way to detect it. Actually, there is there's a few more rules in there. And so again, you have your link in there. One interesting thing that those rules use is actually, as you can see on the bottom here, target destination IP, right? So that will also give you what the actual target of this alert event is, right? So in a lot of cases, you have the source and destination of an alert, but target actually specifies what exactly is this alert, the victim, let's say, although it might not be victim, but the target of this alert log. So it's very useful, especially for graph visualizations and hunting tools like with Jupyter books, like Marcus mentioned in there before. And yeah, so you have the actual function here as in bold. And so what does this can tell you? So this is an actually extract of from a live network. So it has, you can tell a lot of things that are happening. So for example, if somebody set a registry value remotely on a machine, if a key was created, if you have a remote service created, like you see here, the create service while 64W. You can also say if printer was added. You can also tell if a new server was added to the domain and things like that. So a lot of things that can highlight what's happening on the network internally. So basically, again, the service use or the protocol use, MSRRP, remote routing protocol, I think. Printing, whatever that main service protocol is, and the sub-function part of it. So it's very useful to actually tell what's happening on the network laterally and try, as I mentioned, chase bad stuff if it does, or let's say policy violations and similar things. Yeah, so where you can get it from? You can just download it now or later. That's the official link where you can download it for. It has a checksum in there. So ti.stamosnetworks.io. It's open, Stamos lateral rules, and again, you have to be running SuriCata 606 and about 606 or above. And so feedback is greatly appreciated, but this has already been tested a lot, actually. But feedback will be really appreciated on usage, use case scenarios, or if we can improve something. Criticism also at any time. So yeah, I hope it's actually I hope is useful. And you can always come to the Discord chat and we talk more about it, or we have a cup of coffee. I just want to quickly share some useful links with respect to this talk. These are basically some of the where I've gotten some of the pickups that were in here. Some of the information was public, some of it was not. And there's all sorts of Discord channels, SuriCata, Silks, that we can continue the conversation, not just now. So big thanks to all these open source tools and people that are sharing PCAPs and all of you folks that will feedback. So I think, yeah, maybe thank you and questions, right? So I will go back to the download page here. I assume there might be a few questions. So am I still in time or no? Oh, excellent. Okay. I hope there's questions.
Thank you. Really interesting. Can you go back to the slide with the pseudocode with the multi-flow event?
This one?
Yeah, so is there an order for the different keywords? Like, should it happen in this order, or is it if we see all of that in the flow, but whatever order?
Yeah, so in this case, you would have been, so we had 53 transactions in the same flow, right? So in this case, this specific order was okay, and it was good, right? So, but that's just this specific case. There's also cases which you cannot be sure, so you say if those three and those two and that other one is available in the same flow. So again, there might be, in this case, it was 53 different transactions. And it was very difficult to kind of figure out, because to figure out what the order was. You can figure it out for this specific case, right? But that might not be the same order in the next collection. This is with respect to the SuriCon collection. So both would be actually nice.
And could you have done that with flow bits, or
yeah.
Why did you not do it with flow bits?
Because flow bits, they will make it order dependent. You have to know the order: flow bit first, flow bit second, flow bit third, and it's also, it didn't prove like 100% detecting it all the time, at least in my tests, and it requires you to write 3 rules or maybe 4 or 5, and then to match on all these. And at which point, at this point, actually, probably could be better off just doing a query in Splunk or whatever.
So it's, yeah, you're doing like a finite state machine stuff. That's what you want.
Yeah, yeah, something. But I don't know if that's useful or that will escalate into much bigger discussions over cups of tea, but yeah.
I find it interesting as, yeah, what the whole language could do as additional feature.
I'll be more than happy to do like hands-on and pick up review and similar things. I was also aiming for a demo, but I got scared of the Wi-Fi. Sorry. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, Peter.
Yes, hi.
Can you put on the slide which you showed the lock shields and the cross-swatch stuff on it?
Where was that? Here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I have a
other
question.
Questions, folks?
I have a question. So it's great that you're focusing on the SMB stuff. How do you detect like long-lived SMB sessions where you have potential problems that are happening throughout the life cycle of the SMB transaction?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we've actually observed cases where SMB session could go in for hours, even actually don't get terminated until the system is actually rebooted and all that stuff. So it's very difficult. That's another good point for discussion, I guess, later on today or tomorrow for the roadmap. And we've chatted a little bit with Victor and with Eric about that, I think, pre-conference, that we have to provide an easier way to highlight such connections or do it. Currently, what SuriCata has is the flow timeout, right? So that's by default is a certain number. I don't remember what it was, 1 hour, 3,600 seconds or something like that. So you can extend that to keep track of sessions. You can actually make queries based on flow and see the SMB protocol for specific sessions, how long they are. And you can make nice visualizations and see, average time of a flow, or longest time-wise flow, or longest or biggest flow in terms of bytes and similar things. And those are actually very good ideas for threat hunting and all that. But I agree with you. It's a problem actually looking inside those long-lived sessions, and it would be great if you can discuss a little bit more about that later today, tomorrow, what we can do there. At the moment, to give it a short thing, for me personally, it's a whole lot of Kibana and Splunk and all those sorts of queries and all those things. Because you cannot even base, I think once I tried to write an alert that says, okay, if this flow is bigger than so many gigabytes or so many such time, but that has its limitations too. So ideally, we would approach it with we would improve it with a different approach. Sorry. But looking forward to discuss more on that as well. Yes, sir.
We have an online question. Do you plan to keep these rules up to date?
Yeah. As long as Microsoft keeps up to date their documentation. No pressure.
One follow-up on that question. You said you can extend something. Can you tell me the variable or the value of doing that?
Sorry, what was that?
You said you can extend the session time, the transaction length.
Oh, the length of the time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't remember off my head. I can show you right after.
One other question. You said you have 500 plus rules focused on SMB that requires 606.
Yeah.
Can it be added to existing, let's say, ET Pro rules?
Yeah, sure.
To combine? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. They would not conflict with anything. It's just using new things in SuriCata 6 that were improved, the new keywords and things like that. So, as I mentioned, we were in those exercises and I decided to paint the full picture. Because we had a difficult task and a very knowledgeable red team leads and actually people that were doing it. So it helped us sharpen skills a lot, actually. But we also had good defenders on the blue, so it was great. It was good. Yes, sir. You there with the tie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't agree with one part of your presentation. You mentioned, yes, that you can use Flower to collect the information, but can you show the trick use on that? Maybe we should add a CTF question, which is how to add. It's already there. No, I was thinking about add the documentation for the feature.
That is true. That is true. Yes, there will. I don't think this was actually this is part of the documentation, so it should be. It would be good.
Yeah. Can you show the trick or?
Which slide was that? Sorry, let me see. Was it? You're talking about that?
Yes.
Yep.
The signature. Yeah.
I don't. Oh, the signature itself. All right. Okay. Hold on. So let's see. This will be. What was it? GitHub Stamus. It was in here, and then it was. Let's see, repositories. Was it in? No. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was actually, yeah, okay. No, I had the link in there. Sorry. So if I do that, it was in here, yeah, okay. So go here, yeah. Yeah, so these are the rules, and the trick was bigger? Okay. How do you do that without a mouse? Yeah, it's easy for you to say. Yeah, okay, so here it is. I just need to figure out how to zoom in without the mouse. Yeah, but I have multiple keyboard layers here, so it's a little bit complicated. Different languages. Sorry. Huh? No, definitely not. I would have been lost then. So can you not do that from the browser, actually? Yeah. Corey, you're a lifesaver. All right. Okay. So here it is. Here's one part, right? So basically, maybe you want to say a couple of words about that now?
Yeah, so in fact, it's a fork of ET Open Rule that came just after Log4j. So you got the line just before that what has been highlighted. You can see the content GND LDAP like shown by Brandon in the previous talk. And so when this is matching, we already know that we have the attack present. So then we fire an additional PCRE expression that is looking for the IP address in the GNDI context. That's why we got the capital R, because it's relative. And then you just capture the data by using a flow variable that is named RCE server. So you can, and the result of that, as shown by Peter, is that you have the IP of the RCE server that appear in the alert metadata. So that's really a nasty trick that you can use in a lot of cases. Nothing like, for instance, extracting credit card number and put them in a flow event to check if it is a real number. So yeah, so you can. This is not really well documented. I think there is a blog post by Victor. That's all. So yeah, but it could be really useful for this
Very
kind
useful.
of case.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure, absolutely, and not just for Log4j, for other occurrences like that as well. Yeah. Any other questions?
Can we use these programs in the dataset afterwards? I guess that's a question for Eric then. Can we use the values of these flowers and have them in a dataset so that all the RCA servers we get alerts on them live without doing anything?
Yeah. So in this case, you will need a transformation to get the extracted value inside the buffer that will be then added to the dataset via dataset set. So I don't think we have no, we have this PCRE transformation, PCRE X form. Yeah, so we can just use it, in fact.
So you mean you need to add it as it
Yeah.
extracts it, add it live to the
Yeah, exactly.
set, yeah.
So in fact,
and
yes.
then dump it and check it out.
That bring it to the next level. We could just have another version of this one that is doing PCRE X form, setting adding the IP in the dataset, and then you just have another signature that will say, I want to see any flow on the LDAP port for this IP set, which will make directly alert. So you don't even need to look at the log. You will get the alert directly. Good catch,
That would be
Philippe.
nice, yes. So, Philippe, what's the ETA on that feature? Maybe Monday?
Talk tonight.
Any other questions, folks? Feedback? Yes, sir.
Hey, Peter. When are you going to add these rules to the SuriCata rule index?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. I'll try to do it now.
You wanna?
Okay. Yeah. Today. Any other questions, folks? Again, as I mentioned before, no. Let me go close that. The download link. It was somewhere on the bottom here, just so we don't forget. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, then. Much appreciated.